What if the moment that ended everything wasn't an argument? It was a piece of plastic held up under studio lights. Because when Rashida walked into that reunion, she expected tension. She expected questions. She expected awkward energy around Kirk Frost and Jasmine Washington. What she didn't expect was proof. According to what unfolded on stage, Jasmine didn't come with words. She came with a positive pregnancy test. And in that moment, everything shifted. Not because of what was said, but because of what couldn't be denied. The room went quiet, cast members froze, cameras zoomed in. And before anyone could spin the narrative, Rashida stood up and walked off the stage. No screaming, no back and forth. Just a clean exit that said more than any reunion speech ever could. Because when someone storms out instead of fighting, it usually means the argument is already over. That's what made this moment different from every scandal before it. Cheating rumors could be debated, timelines could be argued, apologies could be performed, but a pregnancy test, that removes interpretation. And what made it even heavier was when it happened. Not off camera, not leaked online, but live during a reunion designed to clear the air. Instead, it detonated it. Viewers immediately asked the same question. Was this reveal about honesty, or was it about forcing a reaction? Because bringing something this personal onto a public stage isn't neutral. It's strategic. It corners everyone involved, and especially the person who didn't consent to relive the pain publicly. Rashida's exit wasn't weakness, it was refusal. A refusal to participate in humiliation. A refusal to perform pain for ratings. And possibly, a refusal to continue a marriage under conditions that could no longer be ignored. So the real question isn't why Rashida walked out, it's why Jasmine chose that moment to reveal it. Up until that reunion moment, everything still lived in the grey. Rumors, accusations, denials wrapped in technical language. But the second Jasmine Washington held up a positive pregnancy test, the story crossed out of speculation and into permanence. Because pregnancy isn't just evidence of a moment, it's evidence of continuation. That's why Rashida didn't argue, she didn't ask questions, she didn't demand explanations, she didn't wait for Kirk Frost to speak, she left. And that decision told viewers something crucial. Whatever conversations happened off camera, this reveal violated a boundary that had already been set. A pregnancy test doesn't just confirm intimacy, it confirms timing. Timing is what collapses narratives. Before this, timelines could be massaged, overlaps could be denied, words like separated, working through things, and misunderstood could soften edges. But a pregnancy test doesn't care about spin. It introduces a clock, and clocks don't lie about sequence. That's why the room reacted the way it did. Cast members didn't rush to speak. The host hesitated, even the usual commentary paused. Because everyone understood the same thing at once. This wasn't reunion drama anymore. This was life-altering information revealed in a setting designed for spectacle, not consent. And that's where the discomfort came from. Reunions are meant to resolve tension, not create irreversible damage. By bringing a pregnancy test onto that stage, Jasmine didn't just share news. She forced a public reckoning on someone who had no chance to process it privately. That choice is what divided the audience. Some saw honesty, others saw ambush. The question became less about whether the pregnancy was real and more about why this moment was chosen. Because there are countless ways to disclose life-changing information. This one ensured maximum impact and maximum reaction. For Rashida, that reaction wasn't rage, it was removal. Walking away was the only move that preserved dignity. Staying would have meant reacting on someone else's terms. It would have meant sitting in front of cameras while strangers dissected her marriage, her future, and her pain in real time. Leaving denied the spectacle. And that's why the walkout landed harder than any argument could have. Kirk's reaction, or lack of one, only added to the tension. He didn't immediately step in front of the narrative, he didn't shut it down. He didn't protect either side from the moment escalating. That hesitation read differently to viewers depending on perspective. But either way, it left Rashida alone in the fallout. And isolation in moments like this is devastating. The pregnancy test also reframed every prior interaction between Jasmine and Rashida. Past tensions suddenly felt justified, past discomfort felt prophetic, and moments that once seemed petty gained clarity. This wasn't rivalry. It was consequence. The reveal also exposed the power imbalance on that stage. Jasmine controlled the moment, producers captured the reaction, the audience judged in real time. Rashida had only one form of control left, her presence. So she removed it. That's why this moment didn't feel like reality TV. It felt like a line being crossed, because consent matters even in public life, especially in public life. By the time the cameras cut, the reunion had failed at its stated purpose. Nothing was resolved. Instead, something was broken publicly that could never be unbroken privately. And that's why this pregnancy test changed everything. The internet didn't explode because of the pregnancy. It exploded because of the timing. Viewers have seen shocking reveals on reunions before: affairs, secret children, hidden marriages. But this moment felt different, and people struggled to explain why until the pattern became clear. This wasn't just information being shared, it was information being deployed, and that distinction matters. When Jasmine Washington chose to reveal a positive pregnancy test on that stage, she wasn't just speaking her truth. She was choosing the most public, least negotiable moment possible. A moment where Rashida had no control over the framing, no time to process, and no privacy to protect herself. That's why audience sympathy shifted almost instantly, because people didn't just see a reveal. They saw a power move. Timing tells intention more clearly than words ever could. If the goal was simply honesty, there were countless other moments when this information could have been shared, off-camera, privately, or even after filming wrapped. Choosing the reunion ensured maximum exposure, maximum reaction, and maximum discomfort. And viewers noticed. Social media reactions weren't debating whether the pregnancy was real. They were debating whether the reveal was cruel, whether it crossed from transparency into humiliation, and whether reality TV should ever force someone to process trauma in front of an audience. That's when the tone changed. Suddenly, Rashida's walkout wasn't seen as avoidance, it was seen as self-preservation. People recognized the look on her face before she stood up. Not shock, not confusion, recognition. The kind that says, I understand exactly what this is and I'm not participating. Walking away denied the moment its intended payoff, because the payoff wasn't the test, it was the reaction. Reunions thrive on confrontation. They rely on raised voices, tears, accusations, and breakdowns. That's how storylines climax. By leaving, Rashida refused to give the scene what it was designed to extract. That refusal reframed the entire moment. Meanwhile, Kirk Frost's stillness became more visible. He didn't interrupt, he didn't shield, he didn't redirect. That absence of intervention added to the sense that the moment had been allowed to unfold unchecked. For many viewers, that was the final shift. It stopped being about a complicated marriage and started being about who was protected and who wasn't. Rashida wasn't protected by production. She wasn't protected by her husband. The only protection available was exit. And that realization resonated deeply, especially with women watching. The audience also began re-evaluating Jasmine's earlier behavior. Confidence that once looked like empowerment now looked like insulation. Laughter in tense moments felt different in hindsight. Silence around boundaries felt intentional. This wasn't about vilifying Jasmine. It was about recognizing imbalance, because empowerment doesn't require humiliation of someone else. And when empowerment is framed through someone else's pain, it stops feeling like truth-telling and starts feeling like spectacle. That's why this reunion moment landed as a turning point, not just in the storyline but in public trust. Viewers began questioning the ethics of the format itself. Why are deeply personal revelations encouraged in environments where consent is secondary to ratings? Why is shock valued more than care? And why are women so often expected to endure these moments quietly to prove strength? Rashida didn't endure, she chose herself. And that choice disrupted the narrative in a way no argument could. It forced the audience to confront something uncomfortable, that sometimes the most powerful response isn't to fight, it's to leave. By the end of the night, the pregnancy test wasn't the headline anymore. The walkout was, because the walkout exposed the true cost of public spectacle. It showed what happens when boundaries are ignored in the name of realness. And it reminded viewers that even in reality TV, some lines, once crossed, can't be edited away. What made this moment linger wasn't just what happened on stage, it was what didn't happen. As Rashida stood up and walked away, the room stayed still. No pause in filming, no immediate intervention, no protective reset. The cameras kept rolling, and that choice became part of the story. Because in moments like this, silence isn't neutral, it's a decision. For many viewers, the most uncomfortable part wasn't Jasmine Washington revealing the pregnancy test. It was Kirk Frost doing nothing to stop the fallout. No attempt to intercept the reveal, no visible effort to shield Rashida from the moment, no stepping forward to say, this isn't the place. That absence hit harder than any confession. In relationships, especially public ones, there's an unspoken expectation that when harm is about to happen, the person closest to the damage will intervene. Kirk didn't, and whether that was shock, indecision, or calculation, viewers interpreted it as abandonment. Silence in this case read as permission, permission for the moment to unfold, permission for humiliation to become content, permission for Rashida to carry the emotional weight alone. That's why many fans stopped framing this as a love triangle and started framing it as betrayal. The role of production made that feeling sharper. Reunions are tightly controlled environments. Topics are pre-approved, props don't appear accidentally. That pregnancy test didn't come out of nowhere, it was allowed. Which means someone somewhere decided that this reveal was acceptable television. And that decision matters, because reality TV often hides behind the idea of authenticity. They chose to share, this is their truth, but authenticity without consent is exploitation. Especially when one person is clearly unprepared for what's about to happen. The lack of intervention suggested that the moment was valued more for impact than for care. That realization angered viewers. People weren't just upset on Rashida's behalf, they were upset at the system that let this happen. At the expectation that women should absorb shock publicly and then explain their pain calmly afterward. Rashida refused that role. By leaving, she disrupted the production's arc. The reunion was supposed to end with confrontation, resolution, or at least emotional release. Instead, it ended with absence, and absence is harder to spin. That's why backlash didn't fade after the episode aired. Fans weren't satisfied with recaps or explanations. They wanted accountability, not just from Jasmine or Kirk, but from the structure that prioritized shock over boundaries. Kirk's silence after the reunion only deepened that frustration. No immediate clarification. No protective framing, no public acknowledgement of how damaging the moment was for his wife. The lack of response made it feel like the damage was acceptable collateral. And that's what people couldn't sit with, because this wasn't about infidelity anymore. It was about exposure without consent. About a woman being forced to process life-altering information on a stage designed for entertainment. The betrayal wasn't just personal, it was systemic. Rashida's walkout became symbolic. Not just of a marriage under strain, but of someone refusing to let their pain be consumed as content. That refusal exposed the limits of reality TV's claim to realness. Some things are real, but still shouldn't be televised that way. By the time the conversation moved online, the audience had already decided what mattered most. Not the test, not the argument, but the failure to protect someone who didn't ask to be put in that position. And once that trust is broken, it doesn't reset with the next episode. After the reunion aired, something unusual happened. The story didn't keep escalating, it stopped. No explosive interviews, no messy social media wars. No dramatic attempts to reclaim the moment. And that silence wasn't confusion, it was consequence. When Rashida walked off that stage, she didn't just exit a reunion, she exited a narrative that no longer served her. The walkout marked the first time in this entire saga where she fully refused to participate in public processing. That refusal changed everything, because from that moment forward, the audience wasn't asking what happened. They were asking why it was allowed to happen, and that's a question reality TV struggles to answer. The pregnancy test reveal couldn't be undone, but the walkout reframed it. Instead of being remembered as the moment Jasmine revealed the truth, it became the moment Rashida chose herself. That distinction matters. In reality television, power usually belongs to whoever controls the scene. But in that moment, Rashida reclaimed power by removing the scene itself. No reaction, no confrontation, no performance of pain, just absence. And absence is disruptive. It left Kirk Frost sitting in the aftermath with no way to redirect the story. It left Jasmine Washington holding a reveal without the reaction it was designed to provoke. And it left production without a clean resolution. That's why the moment still lingers, because the reunion didn't end with answers, it ended with a boundary. And boundaries are uncomfortable in spaces built on access. What happens next doesn't need to be loud to be decisive. Whether the marriage continues or not, it can't return to its old structure. Public endurance is no longer guaranteed. Private boundaries have been established. And once boundaries are enforced publicly, they don't quietly dissolve. This is also why Rashida's silence afterward reads differently than before. It doesn't feel passive. It feels intentional. She said everything she needed to say by leaving. Sometimes the most powerful statement is refusing to explain. This wasn't just a reunion moment, it was a line being crossed and a line being drawn. So here's the real question: was the pregnancy test reveal about truth or about control? At what point does being real turn into public humiliation? And why are women so often expected to endure these moments quietly to prove strength? Rashida didn't endure, she exited. And in doing so, she exposed something bigger than a scandal. She exposed the cost of entertainment that ignores consent and the power of choosing absence over performance. So now it's on you. Did Rashida do the right thing by walking out? Should production have shut the moment down? And where should the line be drawn between reality and respect? Drop your thoughts in the comments. Share this before it disappears from the timeline. Because the loudest moments don't always define a story. Sometimes it's the moment someone refuses to stay.